Hey, welcome back to another episode of this series where I take a Ludum Dare game that I made and kind of redo it and make it a little bit better. In the last episode, I just kind of went over a little bit of what I had already done and showed a few of the scripts, and I hope you enjoyed that. And this one, I'm just going to kind of start with the building. So off camera a little bit, I just started creating a new script called building. It's going to be a model behavior. We're going to attach it to a game object. I created a enum, which has the types, a building type of a house or a storage, and we might use this for other things. We have a public building type of building type, and then we're going to have a width and a height. If you don't know what enum is, it's basically just a list of constants that we're going to use, integers, where it's like house would represent 0, the number 0, and storage represents the number 1. And then we're going to have a public width and public height. Now, I didn't get much further than that because we might actually need a height. So if I go back to Unity, and if you look, let's imagine this white square is a house, and it has a transform. I added the script, a building script, changed it to the house. I have the width and the height. It's set to 0, 0. The square, here's the visuals. I'm just using a regular square for now. And what I want to do is kind of line up my ground. I don't like how it's doing that. Let's take the position. Let's do 5. All right, let's just do like that. So my house, the reason why I might not need a height is because whenever you build something, the height really might not matter because you're only going to be building things along this horizon here. We're not going to be able to build on the grass down here. Everything's going to be flat in the background, basically. So which means you're not going to need to build, you're not going to build a house above it. Like if you imagine that these are like grids of where you could place something, you couldn't place another house on top of it. So we really just need to know the width of it, and because we could have a structure that I'm looking for my toolbars. I feel like Unity has changed something. Oh, it's right here. Stretching this, maybe it has a width of, if this was a grid, the width would be, this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So then it would take up 6 slots in a grid. So I think we will do that. Set this back to 1. Let's go to our sorting. So in our sprite renderer, we have a sort layer, and I have a sort layer of ground, resources, villager. Let's just add one called buildings or building. All right, let me go back to the square and change it to building. Actually, let me go back to here. Building will probably be above the ground but below the resources and villagers. And let me go to the square, 0, 0. Let me go to the house. Let me set that to 0, 0. Whoops. Sorry. That was some kind of sound effect I added to my num key. I turned off the num key. I'm not going to use that anymore. All right. So we have our house. So what I want to do with the building is when you build something, you obviously can't build a house on top of another house. So we have to have some way of keeping track of what has been built where. This house is going to be let's add it to the interactables. And so we might have an interactable component on here as well. Maybe not. Maybe the house doesn't have it. Maybe it does. I don't know. We'll just leave it there for now. So I have a prefab of the house. So I can delete that. So let me open up my map manager. And so at the top here, we're going to have a public list of game objects. And these are going to be building prefabs. I could technically if it isn't interactable, it could be, well, no, we'll just do it this way. And we're going to say new list. This is probably not necessary, but we'll just do that. All right, so we got a list of built-in prefabs. And if I go back to, if I save that, go back to Unity, go to my map manager, and now I can add this house to the building prefabs. All right, so now let's go to our map. So we need a grid, but the grid only cares about the X horizontal because it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter whether you do the height or not, but here's what we're going to do. Let's go to our scripts, and maybe we could do this under the managers. Let's create a script, and we're going to call it grid. All right, and let me load that. All right, a grid is not going to be model behavior, and we're going to just have a public int x, public int y. Now I tend to, when I do my variables, whether it's private or public, I do lower cases. And I do only upper cases for functions. But that's just how I do it. We're going to have a public int width and a public int height. Now you might be wondering, well, you said it's only going to be horizontal. Well, maybe I want a grid somewhere else in our game that needs a height. So I'll be able to use this same class for any grid. It's just that for our building grid, we're only going to use the width and the height, or the width. All right, let's see. So now what do we need to do? Let's do a public int off x, then a public int off y. We could actually set this as a vector, but I think we'll just keep it separate so that we know for sure that this is the x and this is the y. The offset is here, visually where the grid is located. So like on the so for example, if I go to here. Here, let's type in offset. Offset. So let's say I wanted my, if I do a grid right now, 0, 0 is, I believe, about right here. 0, 0 is about right here. So if I do a grid, 0, 0 would be here, and then the width would go this way only. But right now, I have a negative on my visuals grid. So maybe I want my grid to really start at a negative 10. And then the width of it would go 20. So it would end at a positive 10. So that's that. All right, so we have our grid. Now, yeah, so what does this do? What exactly does, how does this work? Well, we actually don't want we probably need a construct, so public grid. All right, so we're going to have a public bool of, what we want to say is on, and we're going to say false to begin with. So this is the data for our grid. So we're only, these grids will only have true or falses. And we actually want this to be an array. And so we can't say equals false. We want to say equals nothing. Because in our construct, we're going to send it the int width, int height, the int offset, and the int x, offset y. And now that I'm thinking about this, we don't need an x and a y, do we? We sure don't. I'm going to put a comma here so that it knows it's a two-dimensional array. And let's see, we're going to say this dot width equals width. So when it says, when I use the this, it means that the variable in this class here, not this width here. To avoid confusion, you could do like a W, but I'm not, because then when I start typing up a grid, so if I, for example, if I go to my map manager and I go up here, I say I want a grid, and we want this to be building grid, and we're going to do a new grid. And if I do this, look how it shows me what variables I need to put in. And so that's why I don't want to use W and H, because yeah, I guess I could assume that W means width, but it's a little bit clearer that I know W is width when I spell out the word width. So we might say 10. 10 by 1 by offset negative 10. Actually, let's make this 20. And the offset is going to be 0. All right. So that creates a new grid, but we're not done with our construct with our grid. We want to say this dot height equals height. This dot width, this dot off set x equals height. Equals offset. This dot offset y equals offset y. And that's it. Now what we could also do is we need to do our is on. So is on is equal to new bool, and we wanted to do it based on the width and the height. So now it creates those dimensions. Now we could do a for loop here. Let's say y, and we're going to do it to the height. And we're going to do a for loop on the x and do it to the width. And then we're going to say is on x comma y is equal to false. All right. Now we could add other functionalities to our grid, but for now we're just going to leave that. Like I said, I don't really have I don't have this kind of scripted out of what I'm going to say and what I'm going to program. I just know what I want to program. Like I want to just get the system where you can click and a building will be built, and it will know whether you can build it or not based upon whether you've built something there. So I'm just going to take that idea and start programming. So let's go to our map manager. And so we're going to have a new public void check building. And we could send it the building itself, the building we want to. And we need to get a vector2 location so we know where we want to check the location where we can build it. All right, so how does it do this? All right, so we could write some pseudocode. So what it's going to do is loop through the grid at the target location plus the width of the building. Okay. So how do we do that? So we want to say a for x. The start of it is going to be the location dot x, and the end of it will be the location dot x plus the building dot width. Okay. So if I click at a -1, that's where I would start checking the grid, and then it's going to loop through all the grids from that -1 to the width. So if the width was 3, it would check at -1, check at 0, and it would check at +1. And it's going to check to see if that grid has been done. I don't know if I should do this check building grid as the function, because this would probably be more like a bool. And so it's going to check, and it's going to return, true somewhere. This would be return false. And then we would actually have another public void build. And so we would do that. and see where we might build it at. So let's see. How are we going to do that? Well, let's finish this up first. So if x if building grid x comma 0, because the width doesn't change. Now we could do this where we could program it to where it includes a height, but let's just do this for now. If this is, okay, why are we getting an error? I did building. This should be, oops, building grid. Dot is on x comma 0. We are going to return false. So actually, if it goes through all those locations and it has not returned yet, then we'll return true, so we can build. So this is probably going to need a building, and a vector2 location. And so we're going to say if check building comma location. Notice I'm not commenting a lot. It's probably a good idea to do commenting. So it should be like check if a building can be built at the grid location. And then, so here, if this is true. Now, there's a couple other problems here that we're not checking. And we should do it right here. If x is greater than building grid dot width, or x is less than 0. We're going to say return false. All right, now we could do an else here, but since we're returning false, we wouldn't do the. Okay, so right now this is not factoring in the offset. So how do we do the offset for our grid? Okay, how do we do the offset? Let's think about this. Remember, the offset is just for the visuals. It's not for checking on a grid whether or not it can be built. So this is not going to be changed. It's going to be changed really with where it's actually placed in the scene. So let's do this. So we check to see if we can do it. If not, if we can, we're going to add a functionality in our building. All right, so or not our building, but our grid. And so this will be a public void set set grid. Set. How do I want to say? I want to say that it's more than just. We'll just leave it for now. Set grid. And what this will do is have a int x, int y, or we could just do location. Vector to location. And we're going to have a int width and an int height. And so we will say if location dot x is greater than 0 and width is less than or equal to this dot width. And so this is making sure that wherever we set the grid, it's within the grid. That's what this functionality is going to do. Make sure that we don't go outside the bounds of our grid at all. And location dot y is greater than 0 and location dot, sorry, not location, but height. The height that we send it is less than or equal to this dot height. Okay, so that checks the actual location. Now what we need to do is actually we want to change this to x. We want to say the location, not the width, we want the location x and the location y. So it has to be greater than 0 and it has to be less than the width, or less than or equal to the width, actually less than the width. Probably needs to be less than the height. Because let's say the height is 30. That means in our array, the most it could be is 29, because 0 is the first number. I know that gets a little confusing sometimes, but so that checks where we click. Now we need to make sure that the width, if location.x plus the width is less than this dot width, so that we do not go outside the go outside of this way. And the location dot y plus the height is less than this dot height. That way we make sure it doesn't go outside. Because what we're doing with the set grid is we're going to give it a location and say how big we want it to be. And then we can loop through that, say y. Y is going to start at location y. And it's going to go to the location dot y plus the width or the height. And then we're going to do the same thing for the x. Location dot x plus the width, and this is going to start at the location. So let's say I send it the location of 0, 0, and I want it to go for a width of 3. It's going to check, is it greater than 0? That's not good. This needs to be equal. All right, so if I give it 0, 0, it is within the location that we can do. And then it's checking, do we go past our grid? If our grid was 10, it'd be like, okay, you're good with that. And then what it will do is loop through the y starting at that location until how much height we specify, and then it also gets the x. And we're going to set the is on x comma y. Now we could do this where we say like not equals to is on, so it does the opposite of what it currently is at. I wonder why it doesn't like that. Well, let's just delete that, and let's do, I don't want to do that anyways. Let's, we're going to say a Boolean called is on, and so we're going to say is on x comma y is equal to is on. So why is it giving us this problem? All right, I need to say this dot is on. All right, so there we go. So this is a little function we can use. So now if we go to our map manager, we're going to do building grid dot set grid, and we're going to give it the location, and we're going to say building dot width, building dot width, comma, building dot height. And we need one more, we're going to say true. All right. So can we test this out? Let's do a debug. And we're going to say grid plus building grid. Actually, let's do it in here. We're going to say grid X. Actually, let's do this dot is on X comma Y. Let's just say X plus Y and do is that. All right, how can we test this out? Let's go to our map manager. Actually, let's go to our click detector. And, it's gonna be tricky. Well, in our click detector, we want a public int mouse x and a public int mouse y. And let's see, mouse position, mouse x is equal to mouse position dot x, mouse y is equal to mouse position dot y, and we need to cast it to an int. Okay, and actually we want this always doing it. Sure. Let's just test this out. We're going to say map manager dot instance dot building grid dot set grid, and we're going to send the location. We're going to send it the new vector to our mouse x, comma our mouse y, and then I probably could have just anyways, we'll just leave it like that for now. Comma, let's just say 3. This is just for testing 3, and we're going to say false, or actually true. And actually, if we go to our grid, if I do, I believe this will work, system serializable, I should be able to see it in the, oh, whoops, I put that at the top. I should be able to see that in the inspector. All right, going back to our map manager, we never defined the grid. So in the start, we're going to say building grid is equal to new grid. And we're going to just say the width is 30, the height is 30, offset is 0, offset is 0. Right now we're not even using the offset, so it doesn't really matter. All right. Now let's go back to Unity. Let's play. And let's look at our map manager. And we can see our building grid. And it doesn't really show us the is on. I can't see that. Oh well. Maybe, let's see. Debug. Nope. And if I do a debug. All right, well, let me click. Open up the console. All right, nothing's happening because this is outside the grid. Okay, so we did something. We started at 1, 0. True, true, true. And we did a 3 by 3. So it seems to be working. Click here. All right. No visuals on that, but it's probably working. I might probably stop the video here. And when we come back, I will get it to where when I click, it will actually place a building wherever I click, and it'll check to see if it doesn't overlap any buildings. And what I might do is just, for now, just have it where I can click anywhere inside my grid, and it'll just place buildings based on the prefabs. So again, thanks for watching. I hope you're enjoying this. Give it a like, subscribe if you want. But yeah, I'll see you next time.